Hello and welcome to Ink on the Sofa. Today we're joined by Alice Smith.
Hello.
Hi Alice, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. Could you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do?
Well, arts-wise, I really love to write. It's my number one thing. I've always written since I was about 7, and I've always wanted to be a writer. But, I got a little bit sidetracked along the way, teaching and being a mom. But then just recently I've written some shows over the last 4 years and ended up touring them, and they were just literally from really difficult mental health. I left an abusive marriage in 2013 or 14, my memory it's not what it was, and I had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and one of the really strange things about that was that I started to write. Like, I couldn't sort of get out of bed and I couldn't function or look after my children, and I lost my job, but I could write, which was really strange.
Yeah, it's like cathartic for you, isn't it?
Yeah, and the only reason I wrote poems was because I had these very strong feelings inside, and I was really quite ill, and they were coming out in a short version, which is, I suppose, is a poem, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah.
And when I say a lot, I wrote like about 10 a day, and then I got to sort of 200, and I started to perform them, and I was really scared, and then I just felt some more therapy from that. And within a year I'd put a show together, and then I toured it with a cast, and although that was therapeutic, it ended up being sort of difficult for my recovery because it was probably a bit too fast.
You were reminded of it all the time? Or?
Well, when you get into show business, it's really harsh environment, isn't it?
I see, yes.
And so it was about my marriage. It was called Dark Fairy Tale, the first show. And it sort of struck a chord, but it was quite controversial because it mixed my experience of domestic abuse with burlesque, so it was quite a strange sort of mixture.
Strange combination,
yeah, and it took off for that reason, but I forgot about my own mental health, and I became worse doing it then. So I think there's a bit of a balance there.
Sure. Would you do a poem for us now, or have you got anything you'd like to do?
I've probably got something. I'm just thinking what would be. Can I give you a little bit of the end of the third play?
Wonderful.
Which is because it's a bit more positive, because it's when I noticed something about myself.
Okay.
So imagine that I'm sitting at this mirror, and I finally, even at my ripe old age, I see myself all of a sudden for the first time in all the all my weaknesses and everything, rather than pretending to be someone I'm not.
Yeah.
Should I do it to the camera?
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right. Broken implies I was whole, and whole is something I have never been. I was unseen at birth, half hidden in fear. A fear to love me surrounded me. Dying to live like a liar, they told me God loves a trier, but my head rested on his grave, and nothing could save me from harming myself because my direction pointed inwards towards death. I lived backwards, with death chasing me through my childhood like a slow pacing ripple of old age. Too soon it tripped the stages of my womanhood. Can't you see? Nothing good ever looked at me without seeing the shadow in my rear view eyes. It's one of my favourite things I've ever written, and when I wrote it I didn't know what it meant. That happens a lot.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you for that.
Well, do you know what that's about? That's about, it came out, and I do write a lot and I don't understand it, and then it's almost like, it's going to sound really odd, but it's almost like those words I wrote heal me, as if somebody else wrote them. I know this is weird.
It's like talking to yourself then.
Yes, and even now I perform them a few years later and I find other things in them. This is why I don't think that I'm writing, I think it's like a divine source from somewhere else, because
Sure.
some of the, and I don't want to take credit for it because it's got like knowledge in that I don't know. So this was written about my brother who died before I was born. So the third play was very much going back into that, and so I'm a rainbow child, a child born after a death. And I realised as I was doing the plays and the writing that this had affected and influenced my whole life, and that this part was about that. So I was born half hidden in fear. A fear to love me surrounded me. I actually realised was how I must have felt as a child growing up, even really young, because there was a fear to love me, because in case I disappeared as well.
Sure.
And then it says born from a grave, dying to live like a liar, because it's a really weird feeling that your life, you've sort of stolen it from someone else.
Yeah.
So it was pretty deep.
Oh, wow.
Pretty deep, but you could have just enjoyed it as it was.
Sure. So you're a teacher as well. Many things. Yeah, so where have you taught?
I went into teaching in 2003, and I taught English basically all over the country, Derby, Birmingham, Western. And because I'm a survivor of domestic abuse, the last 5 years I've lived in 5 different places and had 5 different names.
Sure.
So there's always this element of being tracked and that you might be found. And so, but the plus side of that is I've been into lots of different situations, rich schools, Newport.
I suppose that's inspiring for your writing as well, because you get to meet different characters and
definitely, yeah, and just really to knock the edges off myself, because before it all happened I was in a private school and I was quite privileged, and then I've seen that I was made homeless myself, and I've seen the other side of life, so I've seen the whole picture now, so I can't imagine myself being as privileged again as I was.
Sure.
And I think that's good for writing, isn't it? Because you can, it's good for life as well, because you have a different perspective.
You get wiser, I suppose.
And once I had my house repossessed, once that happened, that was just the final straw for me, really. And then everything that's happened after that, I've been a new person.
Sure.
Because I suppose I wrote about it and called it Over the Edge in the second play, Alice in the Wilderness, because I felt like I was in a wilderness. I just had no concept of how it might feel to lose my home and be that, evicted out of a home with my children and dog. And I called it Over the Edge. I think most of us live on the edge, and even on the edge can be quite fun, we could say, can't we? I think what we mean is, if we do everything all right, pay our mortgage, we'll be okay. And then there's this sort of real beast ahead, nightmare that might happen. And if you think about it, you do most of your life is so that you don't lose either your mortgage or rent, isn't it?
Sure, keeping your head above water kind of thing.
Yeah. And then almost everything you do throughout your day is that. So what do you do when that's happened? It's like your greatest thing from your whole life, from when you were, when I owned a house when I was 24. So that to me was Over the Edge. Now that really inspired some amazing writing.
Sure, yeah.
This over the edge thing, almost like a surreal writing.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Alice in Wonderland. I love that book. Do you like it?
I love it too, yeah.
It's got that edge to it of just not knowing where you are, and I wrote about being a lost girl in Wonderland, and the drugs don't work.
Yeah.
And, that element of... it's so hard to describe, but just being over that edge, it's wonderfully creative. But mentally not great.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So you've got something called Goddesse Education. That sounds amazing. You help a lot of people through, your own experiences of trauma and...
Well, I don't know if I do. I hope to.
I'm sure you do. From what I've seen, yeah. Where could we find out about this? Have you got a website?
Yeah, it's just www.goddesse.co.uk, and on Instagram, Goddesse361.
Okay.
Yeah, I've sort of moved out of performing a bit more now and into developing this recovery program for women, and I'm just launching it at the moment and writing it, and I'm writing a book that will be a guide to the 361.
Sure.
And it's going to have, amazingly enough, 361 blogs in it, 361 activities, and it's everything I've learned from those times. From, I wasn't just asked to leave one job, I've been asked to leave a lot of jobs because of the stigma of domestic abuse and mental health. And it's all the things I learned, and I moved away from everyone, family and friends, and I lived for nearly 3 years with no friends at all, by the sea. And it's the things that I learned when I was that solitary that might help.
You found out more about yourself through this solitude.
Yeah, I think recovery is... some people go only so far in their recovery. So, for instance, if you're going to keep saying that you're in an abusive relationship and then you get into another one and then you get into another one.
It's a cycle, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not judging people because I've done it all my life, but now you in recovery you can get to a point where you can ask yourself what you're doing, because it's really easy to say I keep attracting the wrong sort of men. But when I got to the sea and lived there, there was only me, and it was very solitary to actually work out what I'd brought to the table each time. I'm not saying that it was right what happened, because it obviously wasn't, but I can look back, like part of the recovery program is looking back at your own decisions and choices.
Yeah, you've got to be honest with yourself, haven't you, really, I think.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to facing the mirror, doesn't it? I call it sort of owning you're ugly.
Yeah.
And there's another thing, I wrote a book while I was there as well. I haven't finished it yet, and it's called Ugly Girls Win. And I've just shelved it for the moment, but I want to publish that, and it's about it really is about somebody. It's actually somebody who hasn't recovered that much, but it's talking about, it's asking, can ugly girls win? This really interests me, this idea. And I'm not really talking about ugly faces. I'm talking about
what's inside.
If we own our ugly, right, can we really win at life?
Yeah.
And then I got this fantastic quote above my desk at the moment, and it says, loss happens to winners. I don't know where it's come from. It's not from me. I read it somewhere. But I really like that, because that's true, is it? Or is it? Do you reckon everybody loses?
I think so, yeah. They must do.
Yeah, loss happens to winners.
They must do, yeah.
Because everything I do can be connected with one word, loss. All my performances are about loss. All the recovery programs about loss. And how we deal with loss affects everything in our life, everything. Because I've been married twice, so after it's 20 years since my first divorce, I just didn't accept that loss, and had 20 years of chaos from not accepting that first loss.
It's accepting, that's a big word, isn't it? It's like accepting your own eventual death. I mean, you get to a certain age and you think, oh, I'm going to die.
You're not there yet, are you?
Well, nearly. But you know what I mean? I think it's accepting the truth of things, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, because you can live your life really well if you accept your death. So
that's true.
Yeah. This other one, this other thing I've written, it's a 1 hour poem. But I want to split it up and podcast it with music because it's intense. But it just came out in 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And I just went like this. And I've got it at the moment. I don't know what's in it. I've performed a little bit of it with differing results. It sort of scares people a bit, the intensity of it. But it's just come out of nowhere. And it's called Das Gift, in German, poison. So for some people it's they don't want to hear it because it's show me how to live and die. And there's a lot about death. And people don't generally want to come out of an evening and hear that.
No.
On a podcast, I think they would.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So what's next for you now? You're running a performance evening called
Yes.
Rainbow Arts?
Yes,
So
Rainbow
you want
Arts.
all sorts of strange and wonderful people to attend.
Yes,
and share their own
please.
art.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going more into a sharing role as well,
Okay.
rather than sell tickets to a show that I've written, and I'm starting to write for other people as well,
Okay.
which is kind of
That's brilliant. So where can we
exciting.
find out about that?
well,
On Facebook?
possibly, but it's all
Yeah.
it's all on the low, really. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's on the low.
We'll keep our Inksters informed.
Yes, yeah. It's
Yeah.
all secret at the moment.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Alice. It's
Thank
been
you.
brilliant. Thank you so much. I hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.